Now we want to go further by talking about or discussing about the mean deviation and the standard deviation. And if this is your first time of still watching this video, please, that subscription button, just tap it, just a tap, bam. Then you can click on that like, look at that like, click on it again. It won't cost you any much stress. Just click on it and click on that like. Then you can also share as well and place your comments. Now at this point, we want to move further. So today we want to talk about the variance and um, and standard deviation. Yes, variance and standard deviation. Standard deviation. Yes. So the other time we discussed about the mean deviation, and if you can remember very well, the mean deviation, let me represent it with this symbol MD, is the sum of frequency into bracket x, which is the midpoint, minus the mean, then bracket all over the sum of frequency. And if you remember very well, where I say let the deviation, which is the midpoint minus the mean, be equal to d. So we can as well write the mean deviation as the MD. It can be represented as the sum of the frequency, the product of the frequency and the deviation all over the sum of frequency. Our previous example can attest to this. Now where d represents the deviation of the values from the mean. Now we want to talk about the variance now. The introduction to the formulas, the formulas to variance now. Variance can as well be described as the square root of the mean deviation. Variance is the square root of the mean deviation. So variance, on the other hand, variance is the square root of the mean deviation. What is the mean deviation? This is the mean deviation. So let's assume we are having figures that are x1, x2, x3, x4, then to xn. And from this now, it has no frequency. What will be the variance? The variance at this point is going to be the sum of the numbers, which is the deviations, which is the midpoint minus the mean deviations, then the square root all over the total number over n. So we call this the total number of the observed data. Let's assume it's having a frequency now. If the values are having frequency, if frequency is involved now. What do I mean by frequency is involved now? I mean if the numbers are occurring more than once in each of the data, that is this x1, now we have x1, 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 x2, 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 x3, x3, x3. So at that point, it occurs more than one, and we are having frequency now. If frequency is involved now, the variance is going to be the sum of frequency into bracket the square of the deviation, which is x minus the mean square all over the sum of frequency. Remember, frequency is involved now. But let's come back again. Remember, this is deviation. The difference between this one and this one is having square. So let's assume, or let's replace this x minus the mean as deviation. So therefore, we can say the variance is equal to the sum of the frequency and the product of the deviation square all over sum of frequency. Yes, this is the new formula for variance. That is the square of the deviation and the product of the frequency divided by the sum of the frequency gives us the variance. Now, what is standard deviation on the other hand? Standard deviation is another way can be referred as the square of the variance. Standard deviation is the square of the variance. Is equal to, what is the variance? This is the variance now. Let's assume the variance is having no number, we can as well say it can be is the square root, is the square root of the variance. This variance is the square, is the product of the frequency and the square of the deviation, while the standard deviation is the square root of the variance. So let's assume we are having variance to a certain number without the frequency now. We can say the standard deviation for this kind of variance now is square root to bracket e into bracket x minus mean all square all over n. Are you getting it? What if it is, if it's not having, if frequency is included now, it's going to be, it can also be, or the standard deviation can also be the square root of this variance now. Now that the frequency is included now, the square root of this variance now gives the standard deviation, sum of frequency and the, let me use this or this, s minus mean all square all over sum of frequency. I can now put it this way, as the standard deviation is equal to the square root of variance. Yes, the standard deviation is the square root of variance. So that's just it. The first thing is know your mean deviation. After you know your mean deviation, that is the sum of the frequency and the deviation. All over frequency gives us the mean deviation. Note the way that the deviation is x minus the mean. Deviation from the true mean gives us the d. This deviation. Now the variance is now the square of the deviation over the total number. Note the way that frequency is not included. Assuming these are the numbers over the total number. The square of the deviation, add them together over total number gives us the variance. But when the frequency is involved now, it's going to be the product of the frequency and the square of the deviation all over the sum of frequency, of which I wrote it as if the deviation is x minus true mean, which is this. Note whether the x is the true mean or the midpoint, yes, or the class mark gives us the d. Therefore, the mean deviation, the variance having the frequency is sum of the frequency and the product of the deviation square over the sum of frequency. Now, standard deviation is, in summary, the square root of the variation of the variance, the square root of the variance. That is the variance now. So, what is the formula for variance? When it's having no frequency, this is the formula for variance, and it is written this manner. Now, when the frequency is included now, which is this is it now. Now, at the end of the day, the answer you get from your variance at the end of the day, which can also be referred to as the square root of the answer to the variance you got. So these are just a summary of the formulas to the mean deviation, the variance, and the standard deviation. Mean deviation is the mean of the deviation of the true of the value from the true mean. Yes, while variance is the square or square root square of the true mean, while of the mean deviation is the square of the mean deviation, while the standard deviation is the square root of the variance. And just try to understand this concept of the formula. Next video, we are going to give you example on how to solve variance and standard deviation. If you have any question to this, place it on the comment box and we'll address it appropriately. Thank you for following us. We love you. Click on that subscription button, share to your friends, and have a beautiful day. Love you guys. See you.